It is not shooting it straight with Justin Jackson. I just clicked on a new video we've got there. I've got Dewey Burke. It's the post game. I'm Tommy Ashley, sponsored by Johnny T-shirt and Congruity. And yeah, shout out to John Bowman and Michelle Hillison for making that video. Need to get one for the post game. But Dewey, Carolina 82, SMU 67. I freely admit I don't have a lot of negative to say after that one. And quite frankly, I can't think of too many games this year we've been able to say that. Your overall thoughts going in?
Yeah, look, I agree, Tommy. And I thought that right from the jump, our effort level and attentiveness on defense was outstanding. And one of the things that this team has not demonstrated consistently this year is the point that I'm about to make, which is when you give excellent effort, it covers up for mistakes. And look, we still missed rotations, we still missed closeouts, missed box outs, and gave up some easy baskets and maybe didn't guard as well the last 10 minutes of the game. But for the first 30, we were really good. And to me, it was all effort. I mean, these guys were a step quicker. They were more connected defensively. For me, it all started on that end. Obviously, we shot the ball well. Drake shot it great in the first half, and RJ had a good night. You look down and you see 11 for 22 from three, and you're happy with that. But for me, it was the defensive effort and how much harder I felt they played on that end. It just makes up for a lot, and I was very pleased to see that.
Yeah, SMU 33% overall, 22% three-pointers. That's I felt like that was a good basketball team going in. Of course, they got throttled by Duke earlier in the week and sort of exposed some things. But let's talk about that effort, Dewey. They had to incorporate Seth back into the lineup, and everybody was wondering how that would work. Seth came off the bench tonight, got 26 minutes, which is about what he's been getting anyway. Did not score, had 3 assists and just 1 turnover. But your thoughts on, did you have any concerns about how they would do that? You don't want to see Seth get Wally pipped.
Mhm.
And, folks, if you don't know the Wally Pipp reference, please learn
Even I know
sports.
that one. That was
Yeah,
before my
really.
time, but I know it.
And you're young, yeah. So Trimble doesn't start. Ian Jackson remains there. Your thoughts on that aspect of it, and I think that had a lot to do with how they played everywhere else tonight.
Yeah, I mean, Seth was rusty, but I assume Hubert has the same mantra that Coach Williams had, which is you don't lose your minutes because you got hurt. You lose your minutes if you're playing poorly or somebody outplays you, but you don't lose your minutes if you get hurt. And so, Seth was right back playing meaningful minutes. I thought he looked rusty, a little out of sorts, kind of to be expected. They also came out in a funky zone, which obviously we kind of shot them out of that. So it wasn't a huge surprise to see Seth kind of, not have a great feel for the game because he missed those games, plus had Christmas break. Obviously no minutes for Cade tonight, which, unfortunately, I'm not sure there will be a ton given the rotation and how well Ian is playing and how well Seth played before getting hurt, right? There's just not a lot of minutes for him at the moment. But I was pleased with the starting lineup staying the same. I think that's what it should be. I thought Drake was great, really aggressive, hunting his shot, both obviously from three. I think he made 3 threes in the first half, but also got to the rim and just wasn't shy. And we've all watched this team struggle at times in the half court. And you and I have talked for, I don't know how long we've been doing this, 10 years, it feels like, about just being willing to take a shot. And Drake was that way. Ian obviously is that way. RJ is that way. And so when you have more guys that are willing to be a threat offensively, you're harder to guard. They obviously were more focused on Ian tonight. He's at or near the top of the scouting report, so we needed somebody else to step up, and Drake did that. So I was really pleased with how we played. We could have finished better. I mean, let's not get carried away. We could have finished better, but that was a much more connected team tonight than we've seen thus far.
Yeah, I agree. SMU, excuse me, 43-43 in the second half. So SMU came off the mat a little bit after scoring 24 points. I mean, they do average 80 some. They were first in the ACC, Carolina second. So not a lot to think about other than that last few minutes. And I'll freely admit, we have a new puppy, and so I was doing puppy things in the last few minutes. So I did not see RJ take that hit.
Yeah.
I did see him on the ground. He looked like he got laid out pretty good. Dewey, you're certainly familiar with star players taking massive shots and getting split open late in ball games. But let's talk a little bit about RJ's game. I mean, 8 for 15, 26 points, 3 for 6. He missed a couple free throws, which he's missed more free throws early this year than he has in a while. But your overall thoughts on his game? Is this the type game that maybe can get him back in? He's never going to shoot 50, 55, 60% from the field, but at least get up in the 40s where he'd been his whole career before this year started.
Yeah, look, I thought he was totally under control tonight. Didn't force much, and you look across the full stat line, 26 points, but 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, and only 1 turnover. I mean, just a complete game from, that's the ACC Player of the Year caliber kid that we got used to seeing last year. But I thought he was totally under control, didn't force, and candidly probably missed a couple he normally would make or historically would make. He could have had an even bigger night. But I was really pleased with how he played. Easily his best game of the year, and perhaps feels less pressure now that Ian has demonstrated that he can be the number 1 scorer, or at least the 1A to RJ. So I mean, that's a pretty tough 2-headed monster to guard defensively and to game plan for. But perhaps tonight was the first night that Ian was the focal point of the other team's defense, and RJ wasn't. And I thought he was really good, just really under control and solid. Not to totally shift to another player, but the way Elliott started, I thought he was going to have a really good night, and then he got in foul trouble. But, happy to see him make a 3. Anytime he makes an outside shot, you're going to feel good about that. Still got to take better care of the basketball for him. But, look, we got good guard play all around, and Drake's aggressiveness I thought was really important and key to stretching that lead in the first half.
Yeah, Elliott Cadeau finished with 4 turnovers and just 1 assist. One thing he's got to figure out is to avoid the ticky-tack fouls. He gets a lot of them. But one thing, Dewey, I thought was relevant, and I made a note, even when he went out with foul trouble, it seems like almost this offense is a little stronger when just one of RJ and Elliott's on the court. Is that my imagination, or are you seeing a similar type thing going on?
Yeah, look, I think Elliott is most helpful to us if we could be out in transition, because he sees the floor so well and distributes. In the half court, I know he's had pockets of time where he's done well with the pick and roll and making pocket passes for dunks and rolls for the bigs, but he's still too careless for me. And so certainly we're more dynamic on the offensive end when we've got Ian, RJ, and Drake all together. And maybe a little bit more size. I thought Withers was a little bit better tonight. He's somebody I struggle with, as you know. But I thought he was a little bit better tonight. But we're going to be more dynamic when, it's not as bad as it was at the end of last year when teams just flat out weren't guarding Cadeau. But they still are fine with him shooting from the perimeter, which is why I said, you start the game with a 3 from him, you're encouraged because maybe he gets some confidence from that. But I still think he needs to be better. I think he doesn't take good enough care of the basketball. And I know he made the big shot against Notre Dame, and that was great, and hopefully a confidence booster. But job number 1 as a point guard is ball security, and I just think he needs to be better on that. And then the other thing is he picks up a ton of fouls. He's in foul trouble constantly. The elevation of Ian makes that hurt a lot less, because if Cadeau goes to the bench, you don't really feel a drop off because the other guys are performing, but he fouls too much and he turns the ball over too much. So if he could clean that up, it just gives us another weapon that, we're not getting the best of him at the moment.
Yeah, a lot of the passes he throws are suited for guys a lot better than the guys he may be throwing them to, especially the bigs. And I don't say that to be disrespectful to the bigs that Carolina has, but there's certain passes you can't throw to some. And then to your point, the fouls. I mean, it feels like to me he does not get relevant fouls. He gets a lot of fouls that just what are we doing? Why
Yeah.
type fouls, and that's something that he's got to figure out for this
Well,
team.
and
But
I
like
feel
I
like we
said,
say that on both ends, Tommy. He makes a questionable pass or just turns the ball over, and you say, "What are we doing?" And then he makes a foul in transition or in the open floor, and you say, "What are we doing?" Like too many times watching him play, I'm scratching my head like, "You're better than this, and you also should be smarter than this, and you're not coached to do these things." So I do scratch my head with him. There's so much ability. He's so quick. He's so explosive. His vision's great. Um, and I hate to say that he's regressed, but I think he needs to just be more thoughtful.
Yeah, absolutely. Elliot Cadeau with 7 points, 3 of 6 shooting. He did hit the first 3 of the game, and I think that sort of maybe knocked SMU back a little bit. And then you talk about Drake Powell, and this is why you don't see Cade Tyson. If Drake Powell is going to shoot 4 for 6 from 3, you don't need Cade Tyson to come in and take that shot. Talk about Drake's sort of progression. He looked very in rhythm on those shots. And look, if Jackson's going to hit them, if RJ's going to hit them, and then you throw in a Drake Powell making those shots, Dewey, this team's offense can look a lot better than it has. Where up until tonight, and I don't know how they figure it out, but they were 17th or dead last in the ACC in efficiency. Tonight, with Powell hitting shots, it just felt like it was a lot more smooth.
It did, and your two freshmen combined to shoot 7 for 13 from 3. You're thrilled with that. I think here's the challenging truth. We're going to have to shoot something like this and score like this from the perimeter in order to win, because look at the box that we got from our bigs. Even still, I thought Lubin gave us a couple nice minutes, and Withers was a little bit better, but you look down at your starting big man, no points, 0 for 1, and 3 rebounds. It's not good enough. And so we're going to continue to be very perimeter oriented. Now, when we look down after a game, if we shoot 50% from 3, we're going to win most of those games. But we've had nights this year where we've shot 4 for 24. And those nights are tough to feel like you can get enough points to win any game. So we're going to continue to be perimeter oriented. Back to Drake, it's willingness and it's aggressiveness. That's what it is for me. And hopefully he sees that in order for this team to have a chance, to win more and more games in the conference schedule, he has to be that aggressive. And maybe it's just, hey, look what Ian's doing. I can do this too. We have different skill sets, but his aggressiveness has only led to more minutes and more opportunities. I can do the same thing. Well, we need that out of him. The reality is we need both of them to hopefully approach being high teens, almost 20-point scorers, because we can't get enough points from other places.
Yeah, you look at the box score is pretty amazing. I mean, Washington, how does your starting big get 1 shot? It's incredible to think about. It's Carolina basketball. I did like Lubin's mid-range jumper. I mean, folks don't realize how tough like a 7-foot jumper is.
Awkward.
That's a tough shot. Yeah, and Withers hit one as well. Withers drove and had a dipsy-do and one. But 61 out of the 82 points for North Carolina came from the big 3 of Powell, Jackson, and RJ Davis. That's going to be tough to sustain and have success against the better teams in the conference. Of course, this conference is not great. I watched some SEC ball earlier. You see all these teams are 12-2, 11-3. You got Florida just beating the hell out of Tennessee. Just fascinating to see that go down. Talking with Dewey Burke here on the Inside Carolina Postgame. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. They are our sponsors, Carolina 8267. Dewey, when you look forward here, you've got NC State this weekend, which I don't think State's that good. That environment can be very nasty over there. We've talked about that a lot. And then you've got the California run. Of course, they come here. You got Cal and Stanford next week. This is set up that this North Carolina team can stack a few wins. They've stacked 2. You hate that Louisville game got away where you could have had stacked maybe 4 or 5.
They surprised me tonight, though. They thumped Clemson. So, I wouldn't have predicted that.
Yeah, it's just, the ACC has a lot of teams. You got to give credit where credit's due. Duke looks really good. But everybody else can beat anybody on a given night. But your thoughts going forward here, if you had to pick a thing that North Carolina really needs to figure out, I thought it was the defensive end. They did that tonight. The offensive end looked pretty good. What are your keys for some sustained stacking wins in the next couple weeks?
Yeah, it's all defensively for me because it's the catalyst for getting out in transition, and also just you feel better. The emotions of the game feel better when you're flying around on the defensive end, getting stops and trying to get out in transition. If we can bring that attentiveness and the connected feeling that I saw on the defensive end, it just covers up a lot. And if you can fly around and get stops and get more loose balls, you can get out in transition. Ian's really good in transition, like elite good in transition. And you're going to get more open looks. You're going to be playing more against a defense that's not set, which is going to lend itself to more open shots for our perimeter guys. So for me, it starts on the defensive end. That's not anything revolutionary, but we haven't been great on that end. And I think that was the key. I'm reading the comments, and I don't want to not mention that I did think Washington was good defensively. I know he's had a bunch of blocks the last couple nights. But guys, it's also his third year in the program, and he has the ability to be good on both ends. And he is so disconnected offensively that he's not even looking at the rim. I mean, he had a couple times he could have shot a 15-footer. He could have shot a step-in three, which was his reputation that this kid can shoot at his size. He's not even looking. I mean, he's just a passer, a ball screener, and a handoff guy. And so I would like to see him regain some type of confidence. He got to even look at the rim and try to be a threat. So I acknowledge that he's been better defensively, but a starting five at Carolina, look, our expectation is you're going to be really good on both ends. And he has the ability, but whatever is going on between the ears, he needs to reconcile and try to be a threat offensively, because we desperately need that.
Absolutely. I think you're right. He's been more aggressive on defense. He's got those block shots. But when you look at the box score, this is something that's interesting, and this is what Carolina really needs to pick up. Lubin, Withers, and Washington combined for 8 rebounds total. Ian Jackson had 7 by himself as a freshman at guard. So that's got to change for this team. Dewey, let's talk about going to NC State. You've had the experience of being on the court, and we always do this before this game. I covered the last game in Reynolds Coliseum where Ed Cota and Ronald Curry almost got us all killed, if folks remember that game. And then I covered the first game with J.B. Sissel, and both of them, the first game in PNC with State and North Carolina, when Cota hiked the ball between his legs to Brendan Haywood for the dunk right in front of us. What's it like going to Raleigh as a player?
Yeah, it's the most hostile for sure. We talked about this a lot. When you go to Cameron, the student section is, they're doing their goofy stuff, and it's kind of playful, honestly. And you go to State and you can feel the hate. It's just different. And we've talked about it a lot on this podcast. A lot of that, we felt the hate from them, but a lot of our hatred for them was driven by our head coach. Coach Williams just detested State like nothing else. Doesn't own a red piece of clothing, he talked about how he would never have a speck of red in a tie. I will never wear red because of how much he couldn't stand them. And so that fueled us, right? I never lost over there. And our record, at least under Coach Williams, was utterly remarkable against State. And I think his willingness to voice how much he didn't like them really fueled that. I mean, he was a coach that we all wanted to play for anyway. But leading up to both of those games every year, he talked adamantly about how much he detested them. And then, I mean, you'd be able to tell me, or we can go find it. But I mean, did he win like 90% of his games against State? I mean, it was something significant.
35-4 or something stupid.
Right. Something crazy. So I know I see that I have a red shirt on under here. My bad.
I have
Um,
one. I have one red piece of clothing, but it's a Georgia football shirt. So
yeah, there you go. There you
I
go.
agree with Coach Williams.
But look, it's very hostile. It's a great environment. It's what college basketball should be about, and still can be in certain circumstances. It's the old school rivalry type game that is just about as much fun to play in. You know, I didn't play a ton, and especially on the road, but I got to play at State, which tells you how bad we beat them my junior year. So that was pretty cool to check in at State. And one of the things Coach Williams talked about all the time was, let's make it so quiet in their gym that we can just talk to each other like this, right? Because if you're not playing good, you can't talk to each other like this. And we beat the hell out of them my junior year, that we could sit in our huddle and just talk to each other like this. And that was always something he talked about. Let's make it so quiet we can just talk to each other. So I look forward to that one always. And, really great memories of just all of Coach Williams's words about how much he hated State.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if North Carolina this Saturday can get it so quiet that you can just have a conversation like this. That's Dewey Burke. I'm Tommy Ashley. It's always a pleasure to talk to you guys, especially even though it's late night on the East Coast. Shout out to the almost 650 people in here. Carolina's got State, and then I mentioned next week Cal and Stanford. Stay tuned to VIP and Joe Barry. Stay tuned to football people in the chat. There's a lot of you. We've got some football shows tomorrow, a noon dish, and then a roundtable hopefully tomorrow night to talk a little Bill Belichick and North Carolina. Still crazy that we're getting to discuss that. And then also post-game on Saturday, NC State, Joey Powell will sit in my spot. And I think, is it you, Dewey, or is it Rob on Saturday? I can't remember. I'll have to look.
Yeah, we'll have to look.
We'll have to check it out. But anyway, shout out to everybody that's been here. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt, and shout out to Congruity, and shout out to Dewey Burke for taking the time. Thanks, my man.
Thank you.